This is Eric Romoff. You can catch me on Twitter at FantasyNav, and you're watching the Dynasty Hot Seat.
Yes, hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Dynasty Hot Seat, the only Dynasty show that is certified Inferno. And today, next to me here, we've got Eric Romoff from Fantasy Nav on Twitter. You find him at Fantasy Nav. And, you know, Eric is doing loads and loads of things. You know, he's contributing over at drroto.com on Twitter. You can find him over at the Going for Two team as well over on Twitter. And he's got a little bit of a cool announcement to make about a little bit of charity work that you're doing, Eric, which is always great to hear on the show. So welcome. Thanks for coming on. And how you doing?
I'm doing well. And I have to say, I feel like I've got a bit of a home court advantage here. I'm in from Texas, and it is literally hotter than the surface of the sun here just about every day of the year. So This Inferno feels nice and comfortable, feels like home.
Nice. That is good to hear. So not very many people are so comfortable, and see a lot of people from the UK in the show, though. We're not used to stuff like that. Like anything after 30 degrees, we're not comfortable at all. So yeah, it's good to see that we've got a native to the Inferno coming on the show.
Yeah, that is a walk in the park, and absolutely excited to be here. This is one of my favorite shows. So glad that you can make some room for me to join.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Eric, just obviously, we talked a little bit pre-show about you're doing some stuff for your charity tournament. Do you want to tell the folks listening about that?
Yeah. So a few years back, the 2020 season, I co-founded a charity league, Pros with Joes. So we're heading into our third year, and right now is our big fundraising push. Those who aren't familiar with it can check it out on Twitter at Pros with Joes, or go to our website, proswithjoes.com. The short version of the story is kind of impossible to tell, but the shortest version that I can tell is essentially it's an experts league. It's a league of 56 fantasy experts from across the industry. Literally just about every platform, website, radio station, TV station that you can imagine has someone playing and representing. The thing that's different about our league is that as opposed to pitting players against those industry experts, we actually pair them up with those experts. So every one of our 56 teams is an industry expert and a co-manager who donated to that industry expert's charity of choice. So we're raising money for, I think it's 48 different charities. We have some double ups this year, ranging from cancer research, children's hospitals, just about every variety and version of pet adoption services out there, and much more, literally every cause under the sun. So it ends up being a really cool experience overall, right? You get to co-manage alongside the likes of Adam Rank or Stefania Bell, Howard Bender, Bob Harris. I mean, the list just goes on and on, right? So
Eric Romoff.
Really cool experience. I'm actually, I guess I'm somewhat of a pro, but I don't fancy myself that much of a pro. So I stay behind the scenes and do all the button clicking. But happy to have our full stable of pros. Again, 56 in year 3. Wow. Just now we broke the $10,000 mark for money that we raised this preseason.
Wow, congratulations.
So doing a lot of good work, and the window is still open. We're still raising through September 1st. So proswithjoes.com, at proswithjoes on Twitter. There on our website, you can see all 56 of our pros. You can see all of the charities that they are playing for. Get over there and get involved, right? Yeah. Give a little, give a lot, whatever you can spare. You probably won't miss it, and you'll feel pretty good about yourself for doing it. And maybe you'll get lucky and win your way into the league. So the old win-win-win.
That sounds brilliant. You know, not only, you know, charity leagues, which are always amazing, but like a really unique take as well. I think that's a really, really cool idea. And obviously, you know, raising over $10,000, that is, you know, absolutely amazing. So congratulations to you and to everyone else behind that league. That is a great cause. And anyone listening, go over and check out and see what you can do. But that is brilliant. Also, Eric, I'm sorry, I completely forgot to mention as well, you're also doing stuff for, at Green Screens as well, which get over to their YouTube channel as well. Give them a subscribe. They do lots of great stuff over there. So make sure you're checking out the Green Screens team as well. So here we go. Inferno means nothing to Eric. So we're going to ease him in to start with anyway. We're just going to go into segment number 1, which is the art of war, which is just some hints and tips, Eric, that you've got for Dynasty players listening wherever they are.
Yeah. So I guess I'll preface this by saying a couple of things. The Dynasty format is the newest format in my arsenal. I've been playing Dynasty for about 4 years now. I've had some like kind of deeper bench keepers where you keep 7 or 10 or as many as you like at whatever rate. But I am, relatively speaking, new to these Dynasty waters. If you're tuning in on YouTube and you want to show me some support, hit that like button as I get myself into the Inferno, and I am eyeing that Hall of Fame. We are on a specific mission here. So I'll say that, but the first kind of point that comes to mind for me as I've gotten acclimated to this game over the last 4 or 5 seasons is there's kind of a trope around the Dynasty game to do with the idea of a 3-year window. Every time that I hear someone talking about Dynasty, it's always, you have to keep this 3-year window in mind. And I feel like the way that I originally interpreted this and the way that it's largely interpreted when people say it is that it means that you need to be setting yourself up so that in 3 years' time, you can have a competitive team. And I think that's absolutely horseshit. The way that I evaluate my Dynasty teams is I look at them and I say, is this team currently in a window where it can be competitive for a title for the next 3 years? What needs to happen for this team to be in a 3-year window of being competitive? So I just, again, as I'm kind of getting acclimated to this game, it's been a few years, so maybe I can't play the rookie card anymore. But it seems like people kind of hang on to this 3-year window concept, and they're just always hanging on to it. They're always 3 years away, right? So like the can just keeps getting kicked down the road, and they never really make that paradigm shift where they're really making a push to be competitive in the immediate term. That's the first thing that comes to mind. I don't know if that's something that we want to kind of talk through here or just kind of leave it out in the wind.
No, I think you're just right. Like you're not wanting to. Well, generally, what I think whenever I'm playing Dynasty, I either want to come first in my league or I want to come last, and nothing really in between. I want to know a team I can definitely win this with this year right now, or I'm going right. Let me get as many assets as I can possibly get. And with the way that these rookies have been playing, like you don't need 3 years to build a team. Like if you look at a team based off just like rookies from last year and players from the class before that, the players that you could have in your team, like you could have from 2 years ago, you could have Joe Burrow, you could have Jamar Chase, you could have Justin Jefferson, you could have all of these amazing players like Kyle Pitts. You could have a win now team if you blow up your team and draft properly. It doesn't need to take 3 years to build a win now team. It could be just a smart drafting decision. So I think you're either wanting to win it all this year or blow the whole thing up and try again. And hopefully it doesn't take 3 years, because you're right. It's a lot of times you can end up just kicking the can down the road again and you're just stuck in the middle, which is not anywhere you want to be.
Yeah, it's the thing that I've learned in playing this game is that there's so much variance week over week and year over year that it's really hard to forecast accurately that far out, right? So it's more so kind of the context by which I evaluate my team, right? And like I mentioned before, if I have a competitive team, the first question is this team going to compete for 3 years? I mean, even to say you have a league winner, I think is kind of a farce, right? Like so many things have to break right in order for you to say, I have the winning team before you actually get through the championship game. But if I don't have that competitive team, it's specifically a series of questions of like, do I have an opportunity to get there in the immediate term? And if I do not, then I'm right there with you, right? Like I need to look at a different 3-year window because this is not one that I'm currently in.
Yeah. No, I love that for a first tip, Eric. And you got any more tips for us?
I do. You actually led into this one perfectly, and it is a fundamental tip. So I won't belabor the point, but you have to be able to take an objective look at your team and give an honest evaluation of where you are, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to do, especially in the dynasty game, right? These are pieces that you have cultivated and nurtured and raised from wee little rookies in the league. So it's hard to look at them and say that your baby's ugly, but sometimes your baby's ugly and you have to be okay with that. So, it kind of doubles back to the point that you were making, but I do think that if you're not saying that, if you're not hearing that said frequently enough, it can easily kind of get pushed to the back burner. But you always need to have an honest evaluation of your team. And if you are not on an ascension, if you're not climbing towards being competitive, you really need to look at moving the other direction so that you can be competitive in a couple of years' time.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't. The way that I've kind of got used to evaluating the team is how many hypotheticals am I pinning onto this team? And the more like hypotheticals you have to nail on for you to be successful, then the worse your team probably is. You're like, oh well, like Chase Claypool, like if Deontay Johnson gets injured, then Chase Claypool will come in and he'll be the guy. And it's like, like the more hypotheticals you put onto your team, the less chance you probably have of winning. So I always think that's a good marker for evaluating your team and looking at it honestly.
That is precisely how I do it, right? I'll set what I believe to be my starting lineup and say, do I think this team can compete for a championship? And then as I start going through those hypotheticals, right? What if George Pickens takes over the job, right? Or if George Pickens takes the job, this team is a championship caliber team. If Dameon Pierce takes the job and George Pickens takes the job, right? So like as those layers of kind of prerequisites stack up, your likelihood of them actually coming to pass is going down with each layer you add on.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's, maybe one of the most important tips you can have in Dynasty is you got to be honest with that team and look at it objectively and see what you are able to do, or you have to start again, and there's no shame in that either. In fact, that's probably the most fun part of Dynasty. I love blowing teams up and starting again. Like it's one of the most fun ways that you can play Dynasty. That's why a lot of the times it's like, hey, anyone want to take over this orphan? It's an absolute dumpster fire. I'm like, I'll take it. It'll be fun. Like, I love the rebuild side of it. So yeah, there's no shame in
it. I kind of get myself in trouble with that too, because like if I have any doubt, if I am not 100% steadfast that this is a competitive team, I'll just err on the side of a rebuild too. Or if I think that there's like a market opportunity within my league where it's like I can probably get way more future value for my assets right now than I will be able to in a month or a season. Sometimes I'll take a pretty competitive team and just push it out a few more years because I can get a haul for the pieces that I have, because I think they have a primed market. So I'm right there with you, right? Like scrapping it and really building up fresh is a ton of fun. I probably do it a bit more than I realistically should.
Yeah, me too, probably. But it's fun, right? It's fun. That's why we play it, isn't it? It's fun. So that's the main reason that we all play. We play Dynasty. Yeah. So love that. First two tips, absolutely nailed it so far. Have you got a third tip for us, Eric?
I do have a third tip. It is also somewhat fundamental, and that is that activity is key. The more active you can be, I mean, the waiver wire is usually a bit picked over in the Dynasty format, but as we talk about your rookie drafts, as we talk about making trades and acquiring assets, the more trades, the more you can transact, the higher the likelihood is that you find yourself with a positive outcome, right? Like you see all of these like fantastical tales of how someone turned Sterling Shepard into Jonathan Taylor, right? They obviously did not trade Sterling Shepard for Jonathan Taylor, right? And to say that they are, 1 degree of separation removed from that is probably a farce as well, right? That's a trade that they made in 2019 that then gave them a piece that they packaged in 2020 that gave them another piece, and all of a sudden they have Jonathan Taylor, right? So you look at these teams that are really built and stacked for these 3-year runs of being competitive. It's because they've found incremental gains in the margins by being super active in the trade market.
Exactly. Yeah, I really like that. And something that I'm finally over this because the draft class came in this year and I was like, oh no. Because basically what I've done for the last 2 years is I've been trading everything away from this year's draft class to get next year's draft class. Yeah. And I've been doing everything I can to get 23 firsts. And that is sort of like a long-term kind of vision. And now, going into next season's draft, I can't wait. I've got, honestly, in all my league, I must have at least 50 23 firsts spread across all my leagues.
Go.
Just waiting to be picked off. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And just having that, having that plan in place and then acting on it. Like I say it on the show all the time, you don't want to be that guy that's like, oh, I would have given you more for that. It's like, you didn't. Like, you weren't there, you weren't active. Like, don't be that guy that complains about a trade being this or that. Be the guy that does the trade.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And like, I think the other side of that example with your war chest of 2023 first, which I'm incredibly jealous of, is like you have to have a really accurate gauge for the marketplace that is your league, right? If there's a team that's right there, you can probably give them a piece and a 2022 for 2023 first, right? Maybe as you're heading into rookie drafts, right? The current year's draft picks will never have a higher valuation than they will right before you draft this year's rookies, right? So like you have to have your fingers on the pulse. And the thing that I'll add to that is you have to be a considerate trade partner, right? Like if you go into every transaction trying to win that trade, it's not going to help you in the long run, right? There have been times where it's like, I'm kind of so on this trade. I think it's fair enough. I might even be slightly on the wrong side of it, but I think it sets up a really good trading relationship with this team that I want to work with, or it sets a precedent that in our Dynasty League, I am the manager that is willing to get deals done, right? Third round draft picks are there to get deals done. If you're at a stalemate, throw in a third round draft pick and get the deal done, and you will be the first person that your league mates are texting when it's time for them to head into rebuild, when it's time for them to get that last piece or two for a championship run. So you really have to be willing to play the long game. And sometimes that means, being willing to stomach some short-term losses.
Yeah. There's usually never any point letting the trade blow up over a third or a fourth. Cause in the long run, and everyone has got a story about a trade where they thought they lost it. And actually, it turns out it was a slam dunk for them. And like things just switch around and turn around so often that, you never really know. Like you could end up, trading someone away for a first round pick and think, I probably should have given it away that first. And then that first ends up being Trey Sermon. You're like, like it didn't matter anyway. Like it's
right.
It's so hard to predict what's going to happen. So just go have fun, go get your guys, and don't worry too much about a third or a fourth here and there.
Couldn't agree more.
Awesome. So Eric, absolutely love those three tips for everybody listening. And now we're going to slide right back into the main part of the show, which is the hot seat mock draft. So we're going to pull up our mock draft on Sleeper here. And look at that. Not even a bead of sweat on Eric. He's used to this heat. He's absolutely, he was born. What was that being said? He was born in the darkness. He was born in the flames. Forged in fire. So we're going to turn off all the sounds and the notifications and all of that. And so Eric, the first question I've got for you in this, 12 team, 18 round startup, super flex for Dynasty. If you were able to choose a starting position in an absolutely ideal world, what position would you pick for this format and why would you choose it?
So for me, I'd probably look at the 5 spot. I think an accurate gauge of sort of the temperament of your league is important. I also think, having a good feel for the software that you use and what their ADP will represent is something to keep in mind. The reason why I like the 5 spot is, for me, in Dynasty Superflex, there's a pretty big tier break between the first tier of quarterbacks, which I have currently with 4 residents in there, and the next tier. So in the 5 spot, either I'm going to get one of those top 5 quarterback assets that I covet, or my decision is going to be made for me. If not, then I'm in a position where on the way back around, I'm not so far down the second round that it's really slim picking. So specifically in the Dynasty Superflex format, I like being kind of right at the beginning of that middle section of the draft.
Yeah, nice. So let's get position 5 locked in then, and see if one of those top 4 quarterbacks fall to us. Maybe a Jonathan Taylor or a Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase comes off the board, and we can get one of those quarterbacks. So let's start the draft, and we'll see who does fall to us. And as you would imagine, the top 3 come along, and then it is Justin Jefferson that comes off the board. Now, this is actually going to be interesting, Eric, because people watching the show now, you'll have some people assuming that the 4th quarterback you're talking about is Joe Burrow, and you'll have some people assuming that the 4th quarterback you're talking about is Lamar Jackson. So which one of those is it? Or are you going to throw a complete curveball and tell us it's Kyler Murray or Dak Prescott?
Drum roll, please. It is Lamar Jackson.
It is.
Everyone who is out there who agrees with me that Lamar Jackson is in that top tier of quarterbacks, first, congratulations on being correct. And second, show me some love. Hit that like button. We're going for that Hall of Fame.
Yes. I can almost hear the clicks from here, going up.
It's like a symphony of clicks out there. It's a
bit
overwhelming.
Any Ravens fans, any Lamar fans, hit that like button for the Lamar love. Nice. So talk us through Lamar Jackson then. Why are you taking Lamar Jackson here over someone like Joe Burrow that's obviously shot up the ADP charts? What gives Lamar Jackson the edge from where you stand? I'll get him locked in, and we'll let the pick come around to us, and you can talk us through why you love Lamar so much.
Yeah, I mean the thing about it is that in today's game, a not only a mobile but a rushing first quarterback is a cheat code, right? We think about how players operate and fantasy points are scored with variability. And the more that you are dependent on a single means of generating points, the more that you're exposed to that variability, right? Not to mention that, scoring formats are as such where production picked up by the ground game is inherently more valuable than that is picked up by the air, right? Most standard formats are 1 point for 10 rushing yards, and there are 1 point for 25 passing yards. In at least a considerable proportion of leagues, a rushing touchdown is worth more than a passing touchdown. So there are just a ton of things that make mobile quarterbacks inherently more valuable in my mind. And specifically Lamar Jackson. I mean, he is absolutely an athletic freak of nature. He can very much so carry himself to top 5 finishes year over year just on his groundwork alone. Where I think I'm a little bit different from the rest of the field is I think Lamar Jackson is a far more capable passer than he gets credit for. Really, the only knock against Lamar Jackson that I think has any validity to it is durability, right? He is depending on freakish athleticism in order to score his fantasy points. At some point, Father Time will catch up to him. But I also tend to think that is a bit further out than most people are considering, right? When I talked about those 3-year windows earlier, I feel like Lamar Jackson is absolutely in the middle of a 3-year window where you will be competitive with him as your QB1 in Superflex. And if in 4 or 5 years from now I need to start making contingency plans, that's fine. I'll do that with several trophies sitting on my mantle, right?
Nice. I really like that pick of Lamar Jackson. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, people are sleeping on Lamar Jackson a bit, I think. And, after someone who's shown that he can do it so well in the NFL, I think Lamar Jackson's going to go forward and have, hopefully, a pretty big year next year. And hopefully he can stay healthy. So I love that as a first pick, a real, cornerstone of your team getting locked up there. And we're on the clock again in round number 2. And you've got a stack opportunity sitting up at the top there, Mark Andrews. This is not tight end premium, but you can still see the power of Mark Andrews there sitting up at the top of that list at the tight end position. Then you've also got some more quarterbacks there as well. It is super flex, so you could lock up your second quarterback with either Russell Wilson or Trey Lance, potential, cheat code quarterback that you talked about. Or is anyone else standing out to you there?
So this actually didn't play out the way that I was hoping, if I'm being completely honest. Usually on the way back around, I find myself in a position where a DeAndre Swift, a Najee Harris is there waiting for me. That obviously didn't play out. Actually, more running backs than I expected went off the board by this point. So for me, that has me looking to the wide receiver position. I think that there's still an elite option sitting here at the position. And for me, that's Deebo Samuel. Obviously, there was a bit of uncertainty around his contract over the course of the offseason. That has now came and went. And I do think that he will not only be a prominent force in this San Francisco passing game, but the big question mark around his discontent with the 49ers was how much of a runner he wanted to be. And now he has a direct incentive in that very large contract to produce for them on the ground. So, if I'm being honest, kind of in a bit of a no man's land here with how the draft board fell, but that happens sometimes. So ultimately, going to go with what I believe to be a premier young talent at the wide receiver position.
Nice. And that's why, a lot of the times you said to people, like, it's sometimes hard to come into a draft with a particular strategy because usually things just change, and it's often just better just, play things as they fall, be happy to move in different directions. And how can you not be happy about getting Deebo Samuel? So we'll get him locked up, and hopefully he'll have another tremendous year next year as more running backs come off the board with Breece Hall and Joe Mixon and Derrick Henry. And this is something that happens, in a lot of drafts where, I don't know, you might be the same as me here, but if I see this in a draft, this actually happened to me in the Scott Fish Bowl, where it was running backs just going off the board. And instead of panicking, going, oh, I need to get a running back, I was like, I'm going to zig while everyone else is zagging. I was like, I'll just take all these tight ends. I'll just take all these receivers. I'll just try to stack up as many as I can get. Is that something that you would try and do as well? Are you thinking, oh, no, I need to get a running back before there's none left? What kind of side would you fall on?
Yeah, I am in complete agreement with your sentiment. I will not bury the lead any further. I'd be happy to welcome Stephon Diggs to this team as my wide receiver too. I actually have him ahead of several of the guys that went off the board in front of him. And to your point about kind of the overall feel of the draft, generally speaking, obviously, I mean, there is no ironclad kind of tried and true strategy that you can roll out 100% of the times. But if you find your league zagging is generally a good idea, right? So I think that it's something to kind of keep a pulse on. And specific to your question about running backs, again, it was kind of a no man's land. I was hoping that Kamara would be sitting there, but he's not. So, if that's the case, if I'm right in between tiers, if the last player of a tier has just come off the board, then, very much so I'm comfortable just taking an elite option in a different position and knowing that I'll have to build depth or strength elsewhere in the draft at the running back position in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just one of those drafts, right, where it's like, okay, these guys are going for the running backs, and that's just the way it's going to be. And yeah, you gotta be super pleased. I mean, getting Stephon Diggs in the third round, that is really, really good value. And we're right back on the clock again. Round number 4, George Kittle up at the top, Justin Fields, Cam Akers is there, Aaron Rodgers is there, Michael Pittman Jr., Derek Carr. And I can filter by position as well, Eric, if there's a particular position you're trying to see to.
I would like for you to do that. At this point, I don't think I want to look at my second quarterback quite yet. We're also after a tier break here. Feeling pretty comfortable with my wide receiver start. I'm not necessarily a Kittle guy, and I certainly don't want to stack him up with Deebo Samuel quite this early in the draft. So I'm gonna peruse the running backs. The name that comes to mind for me is a bit more of a short to midterm asset in the Dynasty game. But I think I'd like to add Aaron Jones here.
I thought you would have said that, yeah.
Yeah, in my mind, I think he's got at least 2 more years of being an elite option at the running back, I kind of pause there because I think he's going to be utilized much more as a pass catcher in the short to immediate term. But I mean, there's a world where he could easily catch 70 plus balls this year. You know, and it's a small sample size, but in games, I think it's 8 games where Davante Adams was not on the field. Every single one of Aaron Jones's receiving metrics went up. He caught nearly 3 times as many passes. He got into the end zone as a receiver 3 times as frequently. I mean, just his points per game goes up a good 20%. I mean, everything that we have seen historically from the Packers indicates that Aaron Jones is going to step up in a big way with Davante Adams out. I don't think he has maybe that third year that I would really covet. But in terms of the immediate term productivity, I think he is the best of breed amongst the remaining running backs.
Yeah, I really like Aaron Jones for the next 2 years, as you said. And, you know, I think there's an argument to be had about Aaron Jones that he's actually the guy on the Packers that Aaron Rodgers trusts the most to catch the ball because he's done it so often for him. While the other guys there's nobody there really that has caught. I don't know who's caught more balls for the Packers, Alan Lazard or Aaron Jones, but I'm going to assume it's Aaron Jones, right? I assume he's caught the most passes on that team compared to anybody else.
That sounds directionally right, yeah.
Right?
I mean, maybe if we want to count Randall Cobb still kicking around out there.
True.
He might be competing with Aaron Jones, but I think the point persists, right? Like he will be utilized as a pass catcher. I mean, even last year with Adams there, he had a 13% target share among all pass catchers in Green Bay, right? So, I mean, it is a big part of his role. And I think he's being slept on, both by the people at large, but also by sleeper automation as we get him late into the fourth.
Exactly. So he's not being slept on this show. So let's get Aaron Jones locked up as we see a couple of quarterbacks finally, coming off that board there as, Kenny Walker and Cam Akers come off the board too at the running back position. Well, I've still got running back up here, Eric, at the minute. J.K. Dobbins sitting up at the top with Antonio Gibson, special teams player David Montgomery. You hear about that?
Yeah. The reports out of camp every year just are fantastic.
They're so good, right?
Everyone gets run with the ones. Everyone probably sees a couple of snaps on special team, right? But it happens once or twice. A reporter runs with it, and all of a sudden, the downfall of David Montgomery is here, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, David Montgomery is still there for us, along with, Lombardi, Lenny, and Josh Jacobs. Are you wanting to see what else we got across the other positions?
So I think we're probably going to see at least a couple of these guys. We are in the middle of a tier here, right? David Montgomery, Leonard Fournette, James Conner, even. I think that these are all desirable assets that kind of rank right around each other. I was grimacing a bit as Justin Fields came off the board. Let's cruise back to the quarterbacks. My sense is that it's going to be pretty ugly over there, and I'm not really going to be in love with any of them.
Tom Brady's still actually on a real short term.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit more bullish on this player. I would like to get him as my QB2. I don't think he'll be there on the way back around, given that Team 8 is quarterbackless, that Team 9 and 10 only have one. Team 12 is quarterbackless as well. Let's add Tua Tags. I think that he is being a bit undersold in general. More than anything, I am incredibly excited about what Mike McDaniel can do with this offense. Can do with this offense. I mean, it is an embarrassment of riches in terms of the weapons available at him for him. And as I give my justification and analysis for why I went Tua Tags there, the board proceeded to pick 0 quarterbacks in the subsequent 15 or so. Maybe I don't have as accurate a gauge as I might have thought.
Yeah, but no, I'm right there with you with the take on Tua. Like, how I just don't see how he can't have a good year. Like everywhere you look, there's a weapon to throw him at. And especially now with Mike McDaniel, that's going to be so well disguised behind the run game, behind RPOs, that he could not be in a better situation. There's barely a quarterback with a better situation, maybe apart from like Tom Brady. There's no quarterback who is set up to succeed as well as Tua has been. He's got everything that you could possibly want. So I think he's got to have a good year, right? Because he's a good quarterback. So I don't see how he's going to end up flaming out this year. I think he's going to have a good year with all those weapons behind him. So I think that's a great pick in there. Even though no one else picked a quarterback, I still think it's a great pick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm maybe a fourth art of war rule to roll out there, right? Like, have conviction in your picks, right? Don't do something exclusively because you think the market is going one way or the other. If you make a decision and that informs it, that's fine. But you don't want to find yourself in a situation like this where maybe you passed up on a couple of guys that you would like to have on your roster currently because you thought it was going to break one way, and as we saw, it can just as readily go the other way. The only thing I think you didn't mention with regard to this sort of arms race for Miami is they also went out and signed the richest contract of any free agent player this offseason and bringing in left tackle Teron Armstead as well. So not only will he have plenty of weapons to distribute the ball to, he should be behind a markedly improved offensive line. Miami's had one of the worst offensive lines by PFF grade for seemingly forever. So happy to get to it here. I'll continue to justify it as I feel sad about some of the running backs that came off the board.
And also, like, just very quick as well, like the fact that they went and, spent all that money on a left tackle as well, obviously Tua left-handed, like that kind of shows that they're kind of all in onto it here, right? That they're wanting that protection on that left-hand side for Tua. So yeah, that's a good sign that they're thinking they're not going to just give it to a year and move on from there. Thinking long-term with him.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, I will ask you to go back to all players. I think I have a pretty good gauge of the direction I want to go. I just want to make sure that I am not overlooking anybody.
Cool. So yeah, Treylon Burks is sitting up there. Keenan Allen and Chris Godwin, some other players, along with some of the quarterbacks we just see.
Yeah, Chris Godwin's probably the most kind of desirable piece overall. In terms of how this team is coming together, though, I don't know if I want to risk a good third or more of the season to him ramping up, right? Like I am efforting to build not only a competitive team for the 3 years to come, but specifically I want to go for it this year with how this team is coming together. For me, a incredible stabilizing force. Happy to have him as my wide receiver 3. I'm going to add in Keenan Allen. Obviously, the arrow is pointing up on this Chargers offense as Justin Herbert heads into another year in the NFL level. I mean, to find him here almost all the way through the 5th is somewhat ridiculous. I think Superflex has something to do with that. But to trot him out as my wide receiver 3, I've got a lot of upside. I've got a little bit of risk in how I've approached the running back position specifically, but I think getting, in my book, 3 top 12 wide receivers to roll out every single week is going to offset that weak spot at running back.
Yeah, I 100% would have taken Keenan Allen here as well. Like, just the guy is, so consistent. He's tied to an absolute superstar quarterback. He's going to have another good year. So yeah, I think getting Keenan Allen as a wide receiver 3, that is, you'd even be happy to have Keenan Allen as your wide receiver 2. Never mind your wide receiver 3. So I think that's a really good pick there and gets that stability for the team going forward. And we're back on the clock again. Round number 7 with Mac Jones, Tom Brady at the top. You got Hollywood Brown, Chris Olave, Rashad Bateman sitting up there as well. But again, just like before, I can change filter positions if you're wanting.
Yeah, I've got an idea of where I want to go here as well, but If you would be so kind as just to scroll down these overall rankings, this should give me a bit of a better gauge as to how the board might break in the next dozen or so picks. You know,
a lot of wide
really,
receivers.
This is the point by which I would look to start thinking about tight end. I think I've got at least enough leash and enough alternatives to where if I pass one more time, a couple of the guys that I would hope for should still be there. So instead, let's bounce over to the running back position. This is going to be ugly. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. Aaron Jones is splitting a backfield. I do think that his work as a receiver will bring a ton of value to what he can do in the next 2 years. This one hurts a bit. I probably waited a little too long at the running back position. I'm going to go with a guy that I still think has a bit of runway in front of him. He's certainly young enough. He's in a desirable offense. Sometimes you just got to hold your nose and do it. I'll bring on CEH. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about Isaiah Pacheco this camp. I think that Pacheco's performance, his ascension, really is more of a greater risk for Ronald Jones, who might not even make the team this year. But if you watch how these practices are playing out, if you watch how the players are being deployed in the limited preseason action, I think we actually see Clyde Edwards-Helaire at least be on the predominant side of a split. 55, 60% of touches for Kansas City, at least for the year to come. If he does well with those, which I think he's at least has the skill set to do, that could be a few years to come. So not my favorite position to be in with him as my running back too, but board broke that way and have to adjust my strategy a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think he's got another year to kind of show what's happening. His big issue seems to be as well, he can't get a run of games going. He keeps getting injured, and he keeps getting these little niggly injuries that keep him out for like a week or two, and then like somebody like a Jerick McKinnon comes in and he looks okay, and then he keeps his play. If he could just stay healthy and get a good run of games going, I think he should nail down that number one role there. I mean, Isaiah Pacheco, there's been a lot of talk about him, but like even in the preseason games, he is missing gigantic holes that he's just not running through. He's so green still. I would be very surprised if Isaiah Pacheco has any kind of, value going into like the end of next year. I don't think no one's going to be drafting Isaiah Pacheco anywhere near the top of their boards this time next year. I just don't see it really. I can see it more with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jerick McKinnon, and Ronald Jones, and Pacheco. He might end up being like a special teams guy, maybe. I just don't see it.
Yeah, that's really the calculus for me, right? Like if there's a young kind of no-name guy emerging over the course of camp, and the player in front of him is just a warm body, right? Someone that hasn't really done anything at the NFL level, someone that is kind of a ham and egger, to put it differently. Maybe that that youngster can really push them for reps, but when those fundamental things are lacking, and the player in front of them is still very talented, right? You mentioned that Edwards-Helaire has been kind of nicked up over the past few seasons. Yeah. So I think anything he's left us wanting from an on-field production standpoint has more to do with injury and availability than his actual skill set. I don't think it's all that likely that Pacheco pushes him in the near term. Looking at the board now, this is actually kind of fantastic. The players that I was between Clyde Edwards-Helaire and are all still on the board. For me, I'm going to go with a bit more safety. I'll admit that there is risk in the Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick to an extent. I'm looking for a guy that is going to have a defined and a well-defined role in a rush-first offense. Even though he's on technically the wrong side of the split, I'm going to add Kareem Hunt here. Hunt has absolutely flashed when he's had the opportunity before. And specifically the reasoning behind picking him here is that he's got he's got outs, right? Kind of like I was talking about with Lamar Jackson or rushing quarterbacks in general.
Yeah.
Kareem Hunt has been able to produce near 15 points per game on average for most of his time in Cleveland while he's splitting carries with Nick Chubb. If Chubb gets injured, or rather now that Deshaun Watson we know is going to be suspended for 11 games, they're going to lean even more heavily on the run. If Kareem Hunt gets traded, right? There are so many outcomes that can play out to where Kareem Hunt not only has a very safe contribution as my running back 3, but also the arrow can point up. So at least for me, I think Kareem Hunt, Tony Pollard is another guy that I was considering, are falling a little bit too far down the board given that they've got such a steady workload and there are several outcomes where they can take a step forward.
Nice. Yeah, I like Kareem Hunt there as well. And, a lot of the time for me as well, like, you look at the board like that and I'm just like, who's the best player there? Kareem Hunt's the best player there. Like, I think hands down. So I think it's never a bad idea to just get good players on your team. And usually that talent is enough to end up producing points for your team. So I really like that pick with Kareem Hunt there. And especially you've done something that I quite like to do as well. If you notice a sort of gap in your team, just go back to back and try and get that adjusted and get that sorted as soon as you can. So I like that, filling up that running back position. Are you wanting me to flick back to all players to see who's there, or do you see someone in the running back room there that you're happy with?
At this point, so I was hoping Pat Fryermuth was the player that I was mentioning 2 picks ago. Obviously, he made it back to me, but couldn't pass up on Hunt given the way that my team was coming together. Tony Pollard is still sitting here. There are some running backs that I like. Let me take a quick gander at tight end. I know who's here. I never really find myself wanting to take Dallas Goedert. I think that he will have a very solid year. I think his touchdown upside goes up in this Philadelphia offense, but also he's kind of been in the mix for a while, and he's just sort of one of those tweener type of tight ends. Since none of these robots can hear us, I think I'll probably pass on Goddard and hope to get Cole Kmet on the way back around. Love targeting him as a very young tight end on the rise. Let's go for it here. I'm actually going to pass up on Tony Pollard, who I was just speaking up a moment ago. I'll stick at the running back position. I'll go with a guy that I think can potentially contribute this year, but also has a bit of runway in front of him, and that's Dameon Pierce. He's looked absolutely electric for this Texans team in his in action. He's got to navigate Marlon Mack. I don't think that that's something that will really hinder him.
No.
This is a bit of an interesting piece here. Obviously, running back is a position of need for me, but I do think that there's a world where Pierce takes this role in the kind of near to midterm, within 4 weeks or so. And if he plays well, which I think he has the skill set to do, I think this can be his job for a couple of years, right? The Texans are in the midst of a rebuild, so they are evaluating their roster. And if they can check a box, this team that literally needs every single position, they can come out of 2022 and say, hey, lucky us, we answered the question at cornerback and we answered the question at wide receiver. We no longer need to address those. I mean, this could be his job for a while. So now is my running back 4 going back to back to back, feeling much better about my stable of RBs as we get into the middle rounds. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that's good. Getting, Pierce as the third guy in this little run, he could actually end up being your RB2, like in the midst of the year. He could be Aaron Jones and it could be Dameon Pierce if he continues to trend the way that he has been. So I think that's great value there, getting Pierce in the 9th round. If you just look at some of the other running backs going around him, like you could easily see next year Dameon Pierce going ahead of a Damian Harris or Miles Sanders or, some of these guys that have gone before him, even Josh Jacobs, maybe, he's in a position where he could fall. So I think that's a good sort of gamble sitting at the 9th round as some of those tight ends did go, but Cole Kmet did not. You got Goddard and Knox going off, Mike Gesicki going off. Cole Kmet is sitting right at the top up there. He is, yes, just down here on the overall ADP. So is Cole Kmet where you're thinking now, or is someone like Christian Kirk kind of drawing your eye away?
I mean, Christian Kirk always draws my eye away. To get what will be the wide receiver one in an improved offense, well into the mid, even early late rounds is a value that I have been attacking all year. What I'm struggling with is this. Generally speaking, tight end is one of those positions where you're not going to see a whole lot of teams double up on them early. Mm-hmm. I can't tell if any of these robots have done this yet. I don't believe that they have. But I was very, very afraid in my emotions when I saw that orange sticker pop up for Mike Gesicki right before it was my turn.
Yeah.
So as much as I love Christian Kirk, there are a few other guys that I think I can get comparable productivity, maybe not quite as a big value, but I'm going to feel a certain kind of way if I pass on Cole Kmet and I am making a decision between Hayden Hurst and the like. So give me Cole Kmet. My favorite thing to say about Kmet, if we talk about how fun TD regression is going to be for Kyle Pitts this year, Cole Kmet is essentially the light version of that. He is their number 2 pass catcher last year. He did not find the end zone. He will find the end zone as long as he has that same role. I think he will. Young guy, comes out of a tight end factory. A lot of things to like. So I'll add him here. I'll cross my fingers that I'll be dancing with Kirk in a minute.
Yeah, I love that Cole Kmet pick. And Cole Kmet was the 8th most targeted tight end last year out of all the tight ends. And the guys that were the 7 above him were tight ends 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 in overall points. So if he can just get some touchdowns, he'll be well up there with those other 7 guys that finished ahead of him in targets, last year. So he's obviously going to go up in touchdowns. You can't score like an own goal touchdown, right? So he should be fine, right? So he'll definitely go up. And sadly, Christian Kirk did ping off the board there, so we're not going to be able to get him locked in. And Adam Thielen and Ramondre Stevenson going off the board as well. As we are back on the board now. Round number 11. You got a couple of quarterbacks sitting there: Tannehill, Matt Ryan, Davis Mills. And now round 11 is usually where things get a bit murkier, right? The tide starts to turn.
Let's cruise over to the wide receivers. I think I know where I want to go. When I mentioned that there are a couple of guys that would be fine consolations to Christian Kirk, one of those guys was Adam Thielen, so of course he went. I'll stump for this O'Connell-led Vikings team. I think that they are going to surprise people in how much they score here in the year to come. Let's scroll down a little bit. Really what I'm doing is I'm just confirming that I'm not missing anything. It's kind of hard to keep up with my ADP when you're doing the drafting. I don't believe that I am missing anyone. I will go back to the well at running back, and I'm going to add Rashad Penny. I am not a Ken Walker guy in general. I don't think that he really can do much for them as a pass catcher. And I think this is a team for a couple years to come will be needing to catch up a lot. Obviously, now Ken Walker is dealing with a hernia, I believe it is. So his immediate term availability is also in question. And now running back goes from a position of uncertainty for me to a position of strength, right? I've got guys that can contribute immediately. If the arrow points up on guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like Dameon Pierce, if Kareem Hunt gets traded, Rashad Penny is a fantastic win now asset that I can try to move and improve my team elsewhere. Just a lot of versatility in getting Penny here. I know he's not everyone's favorite, but ultimately, I mean, were we midway through the 11th round? Super solid value. Happy to have him.
Yeah, absolutely. For someone who was, the last 4 weeks of the season was running back 1 overall, that's incredible value there. You're just hoping with Penny that he can stay healthy, and the Seahawks are going to run the ball as Pete Carroll. That's what he does. So I think he's going to see a lot of workload, and hopefully he can stay healthy. And you're right, you turned this draft around for having running back something you're worried about. Now you're like, oh, my running back room is super strong, and there's still some great running backs sitting there on the board at the moment in round number 12. Or you want to see who else we got on the board as well?
Yeah, let's jump back to wide receivers. I I'm very happy with my starting trio, but obviously,
Yeah.
as I've addressed my running back need, my depth has gotten a little bit thin here, right? So, for me, the clear choice here, a guy that I think will lead their team, their offense in targets and receptions, probably in yards, should compete for touchdowns, is Robert Woods, Tennessee Titans. Nobody in the league had more vacated receptions, had more vacated air yards, had more vacated receiving touchdowns. Treylon Burks is a phenomenal prospect, but honestly, I'm kind of freaked out about this conditioning availability thing, right? Like he's been playing through these breathing issues through asthma for the majority of his young career, and now all of a sudden it's keeping him off the field. It makes me feel like something has kind of worsened in that condition. So it makes me very worried for his overall well-being, certainly for his near-term availability. And I think all the while, Bobby Trees is going to emerge in this offense and really take a stranglehold on the wide receiver one position. Very happy to have him as my first guy off the bench as my fourth receiver.
Yeah, that's exactly where I would have went as well, Robert Woods. I mean, I feel like every year Robert Woods is a great value. Like, I cannot believe that Alec Pierce and David Bell are going ahead of Robert Woods on ADP. I don't understand it at all. So I think he's always great value. And once again here, Robert Woods, brilliant value in the 12th round. Maybe you're an Alex Pierce or David Bell guy, but I don't know. I just don't understand how they can be ahead of Robert Woods.
To an extent, I am. I certainly am. But in the context of value, no way. Like Woods should be a good 15, 18 picks ahead of those guys.
Right.
As we saw, we said their names and they went off in immediate succession. So, with what Woods can do in this offense, with what this offense needs, I mean, he's just such a smash value. Here, I'm going to continue to go back to back. I mentioned feeling a little weak at the wide receiver position. I want to address that. I'm going to take kind of a tweener player. This is a guy that I think can contribute in the very near term, but also if he establishes himself, he can be the long-term wide receiver two in an offense that loves to throw the ball. I'm going to add Jalen Tolbert here as my fifth wide receiver.
Yep. Yeah, Jalen Tolbert, obviously, like the Cowboys love. Obviously, you're from Texas. Are you a Cowboys fan? Are you a Texans fan? Or
I am not a Cowboys fan. I am a sad and woeful Texans fan. But I won't let that get in the way of these draft needs, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll not hold that to you. So it's we'll kind of just move. Best just to move past that one, right, Eric? We'll not stick with the Texans too long. So
okay. I'm the only weirdo out there that'll claim the Texans. I met another Texans fan at the expo, and it was bizarre. It was like the Spider-Man meme.
Oh, yeah. No, my cousin's a Texans fan, so I know I know one Texans fan. So that's
buy him
nice.
Buy him a beer. He's been going through it.
I'll buy him. I seen him a few weeks ago at a wedding, and I did buy him a beer, and he was just like, "Oh man!" And he just kind of just unloaded like on for like a half hour. It's like, wow. He's like, "Yeah, it's bad." So yeah, we could spend all day talking about the Texans thing, but yeah, Jalen Tolbert, really really good pick there, especially like considering obviously CeeDee Lamb's the guy there. He's locked in, but James Washington has been a bit nicked up. Michael Gallup is. I don't think Michael Gallup's going to be ready for the start of the season. So if Tolbert comes in and does a good job, then I don't see why he can't keep that position. So I think that's a really, really good pick there. And we're right back on the board again. And we've got, two Chiefs receivers sitting up the top with Marquez, Valdez-Scantling, and the absolutely atrocious Mecole Hardman as well. Is anyone starting out there, or do you want to see some other positions?
Yeah, you're gonna scare me off of my Hardman pick. Now let's go back to the full list. Where I am at this point in the draft, I think there's a couple of things to consider. The first is I'm very bullish on Cole Kmet, but there are several tight ends that we have been waiting for the year 3 breakout for like 7 years. So that is an area that I would like to address. Based on where we are in this draft, I don't think that there's really any cause for jumping out and trying to grab any of these guys at this point. You know, for me, Njoku was kind of the last stop in a tier. Hunter Henry went the round before, and he's one of my favorite best ball targets specifically. Obviously, that's not this format. I'm going to pass on the wide receiver room. I'm going to play it a little bit safe here. I think I might be the first person to pull a third quarterback, but that quarterback is going to be Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, almost definitively, this is the best offensive line that he has ever played behind. I like what this coaching staff can do relative to what he's had there in Atlanta for the last couple of years. And specifically, while I, again, am bullish on both of these players, the downside to the Konami code, to the cheat code quarterback, they are more prone to injury. So I tend to go quarterback 3 a little bit earlier than most. And Tua Tags is still somewhat of an unknown. So want to get a guy that I think could actually sneak his way into QB1 territory pretty readily this year. And more importantly, he is going to have the job all year. So that it de-risks my build as I try to make a championship run here in the immediate term.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Matt Ryan is just so safe. And to have him, he's almost like, you're perfect. You know, quarterback 3. You don't really have to worry about it. If it's a bye week, you're absolutely happy getting Matt Ryan locked in with that. You know, great offensive line in there as well. And obviously, everyone's been singing Matt Ryan's praises over the Colts right away because, like, the guy's a former MVP, got his team to the Super Bowl. He knows what he's doing. He's a great quarterback, and I imagine he's going to do great things going forward. And it's got me really excited about Michael Pittman Jr. for next year as well. I think he's going to have an absolutely phenomenal year with Matt Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of things to like. Again, a little bit earlier than I typically like to go for my third QB, but there's some question marks around the guys. The guys that I have are a little bit injury prone. Would rather button up that side of my roster. Here's getting a little bit interesting. You know, honestly, these rankings feel a little bit sideways from my board, so it's hard for me to get a good gauge of where we sit right now. Certainly not looking at Evan Ingram quite yet. Let's jump back to the wide receiver position. I think there's a couple of guys on my board, unless I haven't checked them off. Maybe Olave has already gone, so let's keep scrolling.
Yeah, I think Olave has gone. So you got your Jarvis Landry's up there, KJ Osborne at the bottom, Joshua Palmer, who looked fantastic during their last preseason game, and Romeo Dobbs.
Yeah, Dobbs.
Dobbs
might actually be the way that I want to go here. So for me, there's really 3 names that I'm considering. Dobbs is one of them. He is another preseason camp hype candidate, right? People are trading valuable assets for him because he's had a good camp and Aaron Rodgers has sung his praises. To be fair, they do need receiving help. So if he emerges as that guy, he can certainly pay dividends. On the other side of the spectrum, I think Devontae Parker ends up being the wide receiver 1 in New England. It's not exactly the highest volume passing offense, but we talk about sort of the lack of depth at the wide receiver position for this build. I'll go Devontae Parker. Tolbert is a bit of an unknown. I do think he'll do well, but considering that I need depth at the position, I would rather have a guy that I think will contribute in a steady way for the duration of the season than maybe finding myself in a lurch.
Yeah, exactly. Devontae Parker as well, who I'll just double check as well, but I'm pretty sure Devontae Parker at one stage or the other has been a wide receiver 1 as well, has he?
He certainly has. He had that considerable breakout. I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago now. So he's he's shown that he's been able to do it. He was in the division with Bill Belichick, and Bill Belichick prioritized him this offseason. He went out and got him. So I do think that speaks to his intention. Again, I mean, there's rarely anything to like in the New England offense. This year more than any, as it's some combination of Joe Judge and Matt Patricia calling plays.
They don't even have a coordinator.
Yeah, they're doing the co-coordinator thing with two guys that have never called plays. It's just, it's not going great for this New England offense. Let's put it that way. But if you look at kind of the first guys that I have coming off the bench for me at wide receiver, I think it's fair to covet consistency, which I think Devontae Parker will offer, right?
Yeah, I think you're spot on.
And on the way back around, the sun shines on me again. The guy that I was comparing him against, Romeo Doubs, is sitting there. I will take Romeo Doubs. The thought being that he either emerges as a very valuable piece in a potent offense, or alternatively, I can take advantage of continued preseason hype and try to change my lot in life elsewhere by moving him. So now that we're down here, I'll probably sound like a broken record, but at this part of the draft, I really, really covet versatility in how I can deploy the assets that I'm drafting. They can hit and I can use them, or I can trade them. Those are the kinds of guys that I make a priority.
Yeah, exactly. I like Romeo Doubs there as well. And I was just listening to this is the round 17 quarterback run, by the way. It seems to happen all the time. I listened to a podcast on the way home from work today, and I was talking about Romeo Doubs, and he's going consensus now for a second round pick. That is the price on Romeo Doubs at this stage. And it is mainly due because Aaron Rodgers is talking him up. And the thought went through my head is like, do you think Aaron Rodgers plays Dynasty and is talking up Romeo Doubs and is just selling all his shares of Romeo Doubs because he's talking his own value up? I was like, if I was an NFL quarterback, that's exactly what I would do. I would talk up my players that aren't very good, and then I would sell them.
And just flip them, right? I mean, look, it would be fantastic if he hits and he becomes a thing in Green Bay, right? But every single year we were lamenting it earlier, right? There are always these guys that seem to be setting the world on fire during camp, during preseason, and nothing ever comes of them, right? So if I just drafted Romeo Doubs, what are we in the 13th round? We are well past that. We were in the 16th round where I got
16.
If I just drafted him in the 16th round and he can get me a second round pick in that coveted 2023 class, let's dance. I'll take that all day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would even be being sneaky about it as well. I'd be looking all the way up and down these teams 1 to 12, be like, who's got the worst team? That's the second I want. That's who I'm going to first to offer it, because I think they'll come last, and then that second is all the way up there. So that's what I'd be doing maybe with Romeo Doubs there. And we're back on the board. We got 2 picks left. Is there any position you're wanting to see, Eric?
Yeah, I think I know where I'm going. It will likely be a tight end, but let's take a look at who else is out there just to make sure I'm not overlooking anyone.
Let's have a look. It'll all be, this is kind of a sleeper glitch here. All these quarterbacks are kind of piled up at the top there. I'll just click on flex so you can see just the position players. A lot of wide receivers sitting up there. Donovan Peoples-Jones, Tyquan Thornton, Joshua Palmer still there. Brevin Jordan, tight ends.
Let's take a look at the tight end specifically. Brevin Jordan is the direction that I intend to head. I just want to make sure there's not anyone hanging out there that I missed in the rapid fire auto picks that are going by.
Gerald Everett could be in line for a big season, obviously, at the Chargers. And then my guy, Daniel Bellinger, as well. I like Daniel Bellinger.
Daniel Bellinger is a fantastic dynasty piece. I think he will be here potentially on the way back around if I want to go that route. But I am happy to get Brevin Jordan, another guy that is very young in his career. And he showed a couple of things in really the back half of the year with Houston, right? He was foregoing his playing time for the likes of Jordan Akins last season. But from week 8 on, he really took the field. His role in this offense stepped forward week over week over week, right? He finished with 3 touchdowns over that 10-game stretch. He had 4 different games over, actually the last 9-game stretch where he finished as a tight end 1, right, in the top 12 at the position. So a guy that seems to be ascending, a guy that I hope I do not need to rely on, but if I do, there are several outcomes where he can at least contribute at a starting level here with my second to last pick.
Yeah, absolutely love it, Brevin Jordan. And you'll be happy to know as a Texas fan, one of the most popular players on the show. So many people have drafted Brevin Jordan because I think everyone sees that he's a real talent and he is going places. And actually, just before we pick our last pick, you can tell me what you think. It's nice to have a Texans fan on because I've been singing the praises of Davis Mills all year. What are your thoughts on Davis Mills?
So I get accused of Homerism, which is fair. I personally want to see Davis Mills do well, but objectively, I mean, he might be the steal of the draft at the quarterback position last year. He got him in the 3rd round, came in, he led all rookies in 400-yard passing games. If you look at him side by side, he is almost a mirror image of Mac Jones that everyone seems to want to drool over. But because he sort of looks like a giraffe and he's kind of awkward in his motion out there, because the Texans are generally a laughingstock, I don't think that he really gets the credit that he's due. So from my point of view, when I was talking about Matt Ryan earlier as a guy that I like to target as my QB3, Davis Mills is another one of those guys, mainly because this will be his job all year, right? And this team, while it's still going to be near the bottom of the league, very much so has improved their lot in life from last year, right? They've added more pieces around him. I do think that we see all of these players take an incremental step forward in 2022, and the Texans want him to succeed, right? They got him last year as a 3rd-round draft pick. If they can head into the 2023 draft, where not only the merit of their season should have them a very high draft pick, but the haul that they got from the Browns, who will be without Deshaun Watson for at least 11 games, should also net them another draft pick. If they can head into that situation and not have to address the quarterback position, as a front office, they're going to be over the moon, right? I'll feel that way as a fan, right? So I think that, I don't think he's the next coming, right? We don't have Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers waiting in our wing, but I do think that he can be, an average NFL quarterback, if not incrementally better, right? His tape at Stanford was pretty solid. So if he stays on the, sort of the trajectory that he's on, I think that he is one of the best kind of sneaky dynasty assets out there.
Yeah, me too. I completely agree. I was just on the Fantasy Wildcard podcast there a few weeks ago, and I said Davis Mills is my flag plant buy in Dynasty. He's going off the board as quarterback 31. I mean, put some respect on Davis Mills. There are only 32 teams. Put some respect on Davis Mills' name, right? That's disgraceful. So I think, I'm on Team Mills with you, Eric. So let's see if we can get our final pick of the draft. And I must say, you were absolutely spot on. This Inferno, absolutely dry forehead, not a bead of sweat. He's absolutely nailing it so far. So we're heading into our final pick, Eric. So what are you thinking? Do you want to see all positions, see who you got?
Let's jump over to the flex spot. There were a couple of guys I was hoping would fall. I know Nico Collins is still sitting there. He is another player that I like a lot. But I think the booze raining down on me as a Texans homer would just be a bit too loud if I stump for Davis Mills and then I go Brevin Jordan and Nico Collins. I do think he is maybe the best value here. But let's scroll down here, see if the guy that I'm looking at needs to be bumped off. He does not. That guy is Velus Jones.
Ooh.
A little more
there as well, by the way.
A little more bear. That's where I'm going. I am going with Velus Jones. A little more Bears exposure than I would like without having Justin Fields on my team, but I do think that the sky is really the limit for Justin Fields. I don't think what we saw last year is representative of what he can be in the NFL level. I mean, there were games where he had 14 or less pass attempts. Several of them, right? So I do think we're going to see it open up a little bit. I do think that he's going to need alternative receiving options in Chicago. And to my point earlier about kind of giving myself outs, right? If the second receiving option that emerges out of Chicago is not Cole Kmet, it is very likely Velus Jones. So I feel good about kind of covering my basis with that pick as well.
Nice. Let's get Velus Jones locked in as the final pick. Of course, Nico Collins goes right after that as well, and Curtis Samuel. They are. The bots are always listening, right? It's like when you talk about stuff and you get an ad for it on your phone the next day, right? So that wraps up our draft today, Eric. So let's have a little review of the roster and see what it's looking like. So you started off with pick 1-5. You got Lamar Jackson as your quarterback. You got your 2 starting running backs. Yeah, that might change, obviously, depending what week it is. You got Aaron Jones and CEH locked in as your running backs. Then you got, I mean, look at this. You got Deebo Samuel, Stephon Diggs, and Keenan Allen as your 3 wide receivers. Got to absolutely love that. Cole Kmet as your tight end. And the flex spots at the minute, you got Kareem Hunt and Dameon Pierce with Tua as your super flex option. And then started to address that running back room. You got picked up Rashad Penny. You got some extra wide receivers. You got Robert Woods. You got Jalen Tolbert. Matt Ryan as quarterback 3. Devontae Parker, Romeo Doubs, Brevin Jordan, and then rounding things off with Velus Jones. How are you feeling about that team, Eric?
I am feeling phenomenal about this team. My heart is beating out of my chest with pride looking at my wide receiver core. You know, like I mentioned before, some variability in my running back room, but I think I've covered enough basis to where I should have at least RB2 or better productivity coming out of that second spot for the entirety of the year, right? The season sort of change and ebb and flow. So might be Rashad Penny while Dameon Pierce is ramping up. You know, might find Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you know, shoot out like a cannonball from the get-go, and I don't have to worry about it. And then the first couple of pieces off the bench, right? Robert Woods is a guy that I am happy to play as my wide receiver 3 in almost any situation. You know, Jalen Tolbert should have a role to play for at least the first quarter of the season, could potentially grab more. Just real happy with how this played out. I feel like this is kind of a prime example of that 3-year team, right? I think this team can very much so be competitive in the immediate term. And if a couple of things break in my favor, I should have a 3-year one of being at or near the top of this league.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think that strength and depth on the bench is what's really going to see you through to the end, because obviously the way the NFL works, guys are going to get injured, guys are going to miss time, and having that strength and depth from your bench is really, really, really going to help. So, Eric, I just want to say it one more time, man, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I've had an absolute blast having you on. Great hints and tips. Absolutely smashed it with the team. And yeah, just want to say thank you so much once again for coming on.
Matt, happy to be here. Glad we can make this happen. Appreciate you warming things up a little bit in my natural habitat.
Yes, exactly. And you know what? Just before we go, guys, let's not forget, Eric is absolutely wanting to get on here. He wants to overtake Kev, the Dynasty Goat, sitting at 3. Could he even get up to
click.
Could he even get up to where Jay Stein is? Or could he overthrow the king, Murph, who's been up there for like 3 months now? Murph has been up at the top there. Unstoppable force. So Eric's coming for that title in the Hall of Fame. Easy to do. If you're on YouTube, hit that like button. Hey, why not hit that subscribe button? We're pushing up subscribers as well. So why not do that? And Eric, just before you go, you want to just tell everyone where they can find you online again, just before you head off?
Yeah, you mentioned at the top, I'm kind of all over the place. Easiest way to find all of it at Fantasy Nav on Twitter. One more shameless plug. We are actively raising money for dozens of charities through the 1st of September. Pros with Joes on Twitter, proswithjoes.com.
Awesome. Get over there. Check it out. Eric, absolute pleasure. People listening, thanks once again for tuning in. And even though we're cooling off again for a little while, just remember, keep yourselves and your teams lit. Till next time. See you later.